Good morning, dear friends. My name is Igor Yakovenko. It is now 7 hours 44 minutes in Kiev. Today, April 15th. And we continue our morning reflections about what is happening in Russia, in the world, in Ukraine, and in our souls. Let's start with the good news. According to the official report from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, during the battle occurring near Feodosia, as a direct result of precision strikes from Ukrainian kamikaze drones, a critical radar installation was severely damaged. This is an electronic device that is used for detection. This facility holds an incredibly significant level of strategic importance because it really is capable of detecting a wide variety of aerial threats, including airplanes, helicopters, cruise missiles, and even small drones. In other words, in reality, this is a vital station that helps the advanced air defense systems, such as the S-300 and the S-400, to operate effectively and to direct and effectively coordinate fighter aircraft. To put it in even simpler terms, this enables the occupiers to protect and defend their airspace. The financial cost is absolutely staggering. It is roughly $100 million. So this means that the potential loss or significant damage to this installation is very difficult to compensate for. Therefore, in reality, if this situation is indeed what it appears to be, then it signifies a major shift where Ukraine will be able, thanks to the deployment of long-range kamikaze drones and aviation, as well as the launches of cruise missiles like Scalp and Storm Shadow, to effectively destroy strategic targets deep behind enemy lines. That is, first and foremost within Crimea. This is a significant and very serious strategic development. Another very good piece of news is that the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, announced yesterday that the Druzhba oil pipeline, through which Russian oil previously flowed to Slovakia and Hungary, will be repaired and open for operation by the end of April. You know how people say in such cases, what happened? What happened is that a massive heavy boulder that was obstructing the path forward has finally been removed. This is about the friendship, the deep friendship between them, the friendship of standard, healthy diplomatic relations between Ukraine and Hungary. There is no more Orban. Well, you know, as one not so respected propagandist from Russian television says in such cases, is this just a coincidence? I certainly don't believe that is the case. As a matter of fact, Orban was not only a Trojan horse, he was also a remarkably powerful irritant. Because of his position, naturally, given the nature of it, there was a lot of personal, deeply personal, and highly sensitive stuff involved, and in general, Orban's repeated attempts to put pressure on Ukraine led to obvious and frankly to significant and widespread diplomatic tensions. And it wasn't just a complex set of objective circumstances, but also a lot of various subjective factors and tensions that existed between Ukraine and Hungary. Now, those have largely disappeared and been resolved, and in any case, I think that we are witnessing a real and significant change. This recent official statement by Zelensky and the actions that will inevitably follow it will bring closer the unblocking of the sum of 90 billion euros, which are so absolutely essential and vital for the Ukrainian economy. And this is in order to continue the war against the ongoing defensive war of national liberation against Russia. So now the positive and highly encouraging news is unfortunately coming to a complete end. Now the significantly more challenging and difficult news begins. First of all, the difficult news concerns what is happening in the Middle East. Donald Trump announced late last night that within the next 2 days, a second round of formal negotiations with Tehran will take place. The first round, as is known, was a complete failure, but the specific group of individuals who are now in the White House, Donald Trump and his entire administrative team, are people who really seem to enjoy consistently stepping on the exact same rake time and time again. A direct quote from Trump. In the next 2 days, something might happen, and we are more inclined to go there. By there, he means Islamabad. That is to say, practically, it will be the exact same group of people, Vance and then Vitya with his uncle. In other words, it is the same team. With the exact same goals, absolutely nothing is going to change at all. Once again, so to speak, according to Vance, he was absolutely thrilled and incredibly happy with these negotiations. He was full of great optimism and said he fully intends to persist with these dedicated efforts moving forward. Moreover, Vance reported that the negotiators had made tremendous progress in Pakistan. What exactly this progress consists of, no one knows. However, J.D. Vance recently claimed that Donald Trump actually wants to negotiate a major deal with the nation of Iran. He expressed the personal opinion that he is currently very pleased with exactly where we stand at this moment. This leads many people to wonder, where exactly does Vance stand in all of this? It is difficult to say for sure, but the whole of humanity and the United States of America, in my personal view, are not in a very pleasant place in this situation. And what's more, they're even trying to settle in there. That's it. Why? I mean, well, there are some absolutely obvious things that Trump is failing at. First and foremost, he is failing to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. Why is he failing? For what specific reasons, among other things, is he finding it so difficult to establish and coordinate some kind of multinational coalition that is actively ready for a crucial naval operation within the waters of the strait? Furthermore, former President Donald Trump has not managed to successfully create these vital alliances either with traditional NATO allies in Europe or with those key strategic countries across Asia and significant regional powers throughout the Middle East. That many nations have suffered significantly from the complete cessation of commercial shipping through the vital Strait of Hormuz. So, despite the truly massive and overwhelming military forces that Trump has recently brought to the strategic shores of Iran, the situation remains tense. They are not enough. In reality, there are 2 full carrier strike groups, multiple guided missile destroyers, and a lot of other supporting naval ships stationed there. As far as I understand, a 3rd carrier group is also being brought in. But the Strait of Hormuz is exceptionally narrow, so it can be easily targeted. And that's exactly why all these massive military forces are kept at a considerably safe distance from the Iranian shores. It is perfectly clear to everyone that no one is going to bring all these incredibly expensive and sophisticated naval ships within the direct firing range of coastal cannons from Iran. To put it another way, the prospect of conducting a ground operation on sovereign Iranian territory remains unlikely. It is also clearly beyond Trump's capabilities. That is, it is quite apparent that the American command is not currently prepared for this today. So, the question arises, will these measures be sufficient to ensure the safe passage of tankers through the Strait of Hormuz? The answer is very simple. No, it is categorically not enough. That is just, for example, here comes information. One ship has passed, another ship has passed. I just want to take a moment to mention a specific figure that will make it abundantly clear how all of this current activity doesn't really matter at all in the grand scheme of things. Before the outbreak of the war, approximately 1,500 large commercial vessels passed through the vital Strait of Hormuz every single day. Now, however, it is happily reported in the news that one lone ship has passed, or perhaps 2 ships have successfully passed through. And so when you look at the data, it is painfully obvious that this current situation is nowhere near a recovery. It shows that the United States of America is not able to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. So tell me, are you the United States? Yes, this is the remarkable measure that has been applied to the US and which excites many observers, that the US decided so to effectively block the passage. Well, at first, Trump publicly announced his intention that he would block the Strait of Hormuz completely and indefinitely. Then it turned out that, after all, the discussion would be about blocking Iranian shipping. Well, most likely they'll succeed. In general, with such enormous and highly capable naval forces, it is not a particularly difficult task to carry out. But in fact, one way or another, this has further increased the overall level of danger and risk for commercial shipping in these waters. To put it simply, the narrow Strait of Hormuz is already heavily packed with Iranian naval mines. Furthermore, it is covered by Iranian missiles and suicide drones, and on top of that, you might also encounter even more threats. Some very aggressively minded American destroyer. In any case, we've already talked with you about what this looks like. The blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is not merely a matter of the presence of naval mines, and it is not only about the area being covered by heavy fire, but it is also about the fact that no insurance company will be willing to provide coverage or cooperate with shipping companies planning to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. All of this. Insurance companies, in this sense, are significantly more powerful than either an Iranian or American blockade. So, in other words, nearly the entire world suffers significant direct losses from this, meaning, and here I wanted to take a moment to digress from the main topic, from the specific events unfolding right now, because today we will also have a conversation with Abbas Galyamov. And in this regard, we will have an even more useful discussion with Mikhail Ivanovich Krutikin. And today I am already looking forward to these two conversations, because in many ways they will probably make up for my certain amateurism in the topics we are discussing now. Now I would like to discuss some observations and reflections of a more general nature. There is a big question. What is happening around Iran right now? Could this simply be yet another isolated crisis? Or is it something far more global in its reach? Moreover, it has become increasingly obvious to everyone that the consequences of what has happened and is still happening there include the complete shutdown of production across the Asia-Pacific region and taking urgent emergency measures that Europe is now experiencing most of all. The ones suffering the most are the national economies of those countries that are entirely and heavily dependent on global energy supplies. Not just oil, but also aluminum. There are also fertilizers and everything else. And what is very telling is that the United States of America is suffering from this the least. In this sense, Trump is right when he says, well, why should the US be the ones to unblock it after all? The Strait of Hormuz, it's all the same to us. It's Europe that's suffering. It's Asia that's suffering. Let them unblock it. The primary and most fundamental reason why it was not possible to create a broad and unified global coalition, and why no one supported the United States in its legitimate and well-intentioned efforts, whatever you say, they were just attempts, to eliminate such an imminent and catastrophic threat to the stability of the whole world as Iran, is actually quite simple and straightforward to understand. And the fundamental reason for this situation lies in something that many of my colleagues and various interlocutors have repeatedly suggested should simply be ignored. Well, people often say to me, so what if he did that? It is just Trump being himself and saying something provocative again. They ask, so what if Trump, for example, actually dressed himself up as Jesus Christ and then publicly started criticizing the Pope in a very aggressive manner? Well, so what if Trump said he was going to seize Greenland, and by force at that? Well, so what if Trump said that Canada should become the 51st state of the United States of America? Well, so what if Trump once again said something against Ukraine, against Zelensky, and so on? So what? It's just Trump, and his words really don't mean a single thing. His words do mean something. They are very significant. They are valuable not only as actual insider trading, because after every statement Trump makes, the market either surges or drops. The price of stocks on the exchange, this is what those around him profit from. Donald Trump is undermining public trust. As well as the formal public statement released by Donald Trump, which specifically pointed out the fact that Iran can be bombed, that it should be bombed back to the Stone Age. The idea that the ancient and rich Iranian civilization could suddenly vanish into thin air overnight, these are the very words that have been spoken. These events are in fact widely perceived by many as a final farewell to the America that was consistently viewed as the country it became after World War II, as a country that held the primary responsibility for world order. I can still vividly recall the moment. Those speeches, words matter. A politician's words are his actions. This is something that many commentators on current events fail to take into account. And those who say, well, you don't need to listen to Trump, you do. I just recall what was said by Ronald Reagan, what Harry Truman said, and what President John Kennedy said. They spent quite some time talking about, well, in particular, Truman and Kennedy spoke about the moral duty to help even those individuals who are currently suffering from the dire effects of total starvation, spoke passionately about the urgent need to fight global poverty. These were the very same visionary politicians who defended and introduced to the entire world the fundamental values of Euro-Atlantic civilization. It was precisely thanks to these enduring principles that the United States of America was able to become, throughout the course of the 20th century, a powerful global symbol of an open, exceptionally strong, and deeply attractive country for all people, thanks to which, well, at the very least, I know that within my own personal circle, to come to get a visa to the U.S. to obtain United States citizenship. That represented a ticket to a brand new and much happier life. Now, there is absolutely nothing left like that. That is, we see the complete destruction of what so many people, especially those on the far right, valued so much. And among the Russian oppositionists, among the many opponents of Putin, there are actually a lot of far-right people. So together with Donald Trump and his loyal Trumpists, they were all very happy and enthusiastically applauded the systematic destruction, and with immigration and customs enforcement, that was exactly the primary tool used. The active demonstration of the United States of America to the rest of the world as an open, attractive, and powerful country was vital, but in fact, Trump eventually replaced that traditional slogan of America. Above all, "Let's make America great again" became the new focus, effectively replacing the previous slogan of America with something far more isolationist in its core nature. They simply do not care at all about anyone else. And in practical terms, this means the destruction of NATO, the attempt to destroy the European Union, and a total and absolute rejection of the entire value system. Showing support for Viktor Orban, aligning with Vladimir Putin, and engaging in confrontation with Ukraine, this represents a complete and total abandonment of the principles of real American leadership. So, a significant and pressing question now arises. Is the United States currently truly capable of successfully overcoming this profound crisis? Is Trumpism, and specifically Trump personally, it's clear that Trump is now leaving. He is a fading figure. Most likely, after November 3rd, he will become not just a lame duck, but a disabled duck. He won't be able to do anything at all except focus on dodging a massive wave of criminal charges and the looming threat of impeachment. I truly hope that is exactly how the situation will play out in the end. But when we look at the situation, is Donald Trump himself specifically the one responsible? Is this the only manifestation of this current crisis? Or are we really talking about a profound internal transformation and a systemic degradation of the entire United States of America? We are living in an era The second coming of Trump means that this is not accidental. This essentially means that certain powerful forces operating within the borders of the United States of America are constantly reproducing this societal illness, effectively cultivating this particular virus and this very specific dangerous strain of the disease. Trump's misfortunes will most likely fade away into the past forever, but I am not entirely confident that the deep-seated processes that brought Trump to life a second time will be so easily overcome by the system. You know, when we consider the concept of global leadership, it is like this. The yellow leader's jersey in a race is by no means something that is permanently fixed or attached to the body of any particular country at any given moment, no matter how powerful it may seem. World leaders change. Once it was Great Britain, then it became the United States of America. So throughout history, there have been certain times when global leaders were quite different. I truly and sincerely would not want the various actions and policies that Trump is currently pursuing to lead to a serious situation. Degradation and a change in the global leader, because for now I don't see who, let's put it this way, who among the so-called good countries could claim that role. For now it's China that is coming to replace the United States of America. And that's not something I would really want. So I really hope that Trump won't succeed in completely burying the American century in world politics. But he is trying very, very hard.